Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with another Rates and Reviewed. And today we are doing a band that I am very excited to do. And that is one of the godfathers of deathcore. That's Suicide Silence, man. Suicide Silence and 6 awesome albums. I've been listening to these guys since 2008. One of the few bands I think I've been listening to since the start of their career. Not like, when they were like a little local band touring with like an EP or something, but I just mean like since like their first major release. Their first major release, The Cleansing, came out in 2007. Initially, I was like, deathcore's stupid. I'm more of a metalcore guy. I think, believe it or not, there was a part of me back then that thought that there was a such thing as too extreme. And frankly, there are still some subgenres of metal that I'm not a huge fan of. That's just like way too. I just don't think it's palatable to listen to. That's slam core, or like maybe some grind core because of the production and shit. But yeah, believe it or not, there was like a 16 or 17-year-old version of me who thought deathcore was stupid. I had no interest in it, and I was all about Kill Switch, Shadows Fall as a like dying trivium. But eventually I got into it, man. Senior year of high school. And then in 2009, which was when I graduated, shortly before, I think it was like in April, I went to the Music as a Weapon tour and saw them live. So even though, I saw Mitch Lucker live before he passed away. I forgot if it was 2012 or so. Horrible motorcycle accident. And in 2015, I saw them live when Korn was touring their 20-year anniversary of their first album. So that means I saw Eddie Hermida as well. So with regards to the 2 vocalists, which you're going to see pictured up on the thumbnail or on the slideshow, this can be a pretty contentious ranking. Now, a lot of bands that have had 2 vocalists in their heyday, whether it's Killswitch Engage or Suicide Silence or fucking Bury Your Dead, I don't know, some other examples, AC/DC, Anthrax. Okay, I need to stop. There's usually a debate on who people like better, and I think much like Killswitch Engage, people tend to have a overall respect for both vocalists for different reasons. Now, there's usually a fan favorite, and that may or may not play a factor in my ranking. I went through other people's rankings, and I've seen some varied responses. I've agreed with some people on their takes on some albums, and I'm excited to get into these. So I was surprised, honestly, by how this turned out, but I was also a little overwhelmed at how hard it was to rank a few of these. Now, I don't think I've had this much difficulty ranking albums probably since fucking Black Dahlia Murder. But unlike Black Dahlia Murder, Suicide Silence only has 6 studio albums. So this one I was able to do a little bit quicker. I was much more familiar with their 6 albums compared to other bands. I have been listening to this album, or this band, and all their releases since they've been out. I never took a break from Suicide Silence. I've liked this band since 2008. Seen them live twice. Every member of this band is extraordinary on their instrument. There's no weak links. Guitars, drums, bass, vocals. It's all solid. And I can't wait to get into it, man. So before I get into it, for the 6 albums, which I'm going to rank, and then I'm going to give you my top 10 Suicide Silence tracks, know that number 6, I pretty much knew what that one was going to be. And I was able to rank my second favorite and my most favorite, which there was a little bit of a surprise there for me. But spots 3 through 5, 3, 4, and 5 were tightly contested, basically in a virtual tie. But of course, I figured out a ranking. I'm going to go through all of it here shortly. And in order to break that tie, I had to look into a couple of different metrics outside of like the aggregate score of everything. I had to look at how the album flowed, how original was it compared to previous work or within the genre, just personal preference on what I like from Suicide Silence, the production of the album, which one sounded the best and easiest to listen to. And then, of course, there's that X factor, whether it's nostalgia or the potency of the album, depending on where they're at in their career, or that space and time. Sometimes that X factor does play a tremendous role in how I ultimately rank these. And lastly, the spread. The weakest album got a B minus, so a little over an 8 out of 10. And the best album got a 9 out of 10, which means it's excellent. Got an A minus. So we got 6 albums that I really enjoy here. And regardless of what's at the bottom or what's at the top, I do enjoy all the albums. So I think I've talked long enough. Let's do this. Bottom spot goes to their self-titled album from 2017. Now, I did listen to this album when it came out, and unlike the general consensus where everybody was like, what the fuck is this? I hate it. I don't hate it. I didn't look at it. I gave it a B minus, so obviously it's listenable, and there's some redeeming songs on here. For me, this is a transition album where there was one or two things they could have done. They could have taken this. I'm gonna partially agree with what people call this. It's their new metal album. New metal's got a lot of different tangents in it. It's got a lot of different things you could go about. It doesn't mean you have to rap in your music. So if all their other albums are deathcore and death metal and shit, then yes, this is more of a new metal, alternative metal, I guess you could call it, style album. They could have just gone back to form after all the backlash and release Becoming the Hunter, or they could have doubled down on this song, on this style, and made it even better and more refined. I love that Suicide Silence took this risk, and I would have not condemned them if they had kept going with this, because there actually is some solid musicianship on this album, and it's very raw. Eddie does a different style of vocals on this album, but to me the songs just sound kind of clunky, and they sound, some of the vocal phrasing and some of the lyrics just don't seem to fit the music. The music itself is awesome. In fact, just the opening minute of Doris sounds like a traditional Suicide Silence album. Sounds like deathcore up until that chorus hits. And I've seen things, and I've seen people edit it out the tee-hee, which is just a fucking falsetto. To you, whatever he says, where they removed that, and everybody's like, oh my god, this actually sounds like a great song now. It's like, whatever, man. Doris is still a great song. It's got a great chorus. He's a great singer, Eddie. Of course, he's an excellent vocalist. So, I mean, but to me, the best songs on this album are Silence. I love the guitar work on there. Sounds very much like some raw Korn material there. Like, you could definitely hear the Korn and Deftones influence in an album like this. Even before this album, though, you could hear Korn influence in some of their material. The Zero and Conformity, great songs, and of course, Be Careful, You Might Hurt Yourselves. Like, it does close on a solid note. A lot of great songs on here. Songs I could really do without, though, are Listen and, unfortunately, Hold Me Up, Hold Me Down, which sounds like a old school nu metal track. It just kind of bored me a little bit. So the bass guitar work on this album is sexy. The guitar work itself is solid. A lot of cool pinch harmonics and riffs. Eddie sounds great. It sounds raw, but it just sounds like this album has a little bit of an identity crisis, but I do appreciate the passion project aspect behind it. I like and respect that they took the risk, and frankly, I would like it if they did it again. I would like it if they put out another album like this, because even before Mitch Lucker died, and I said that really intensely, died! Sorry. Rest in peace, Mitch. You fucking god. Where is your god? Even before he died, there were nu metal elements in the older material. So, anyway, bottom spot goes to their self-titled album, but unlike a lot of people, I do not hate it. I think it's worth a listen, and I think it's worth a shot, and I commend them for taking this chance and would not be upset if they did it again. Number 5 spot, which kind of gets into our three-way tie. Least favorite, though, is their newest album, Become the Hunter. This is a solid B album, though. It's got a solid intro with Meltdown. Great series of tracks in a row. Basically, the whole front half of the album with 2 steps, Feel Alive. Favorite tracks are Love Me to Death. The fucking nu metal intro sound to Death's Anxiety, followed just up by an insanely good deathcore masterpiece. A little bit of self-titled influence and melody in songs like Skin Tight or I think Disaster Valley. I love the bridge and the solo to the Scythe. I would almost call this not a midway point, but if you somewhat split the difference between Self-Titled and You Can't Stop Me, you might have Become the Hunter, because they didn't 100% ditch the raw nu metal sound on this album, but they did very much go back more towards their return to form to deathcore with this. Some people say that this album sucks, it lacks soul, it lacks anything original. I disagree. I think the guitar work is solid. I think Eddie continues to sound solid here, and he kept some of the raw vocals and raw mixing from their self-titled album. So if you want a little bit of a crunchier, less polished, You Can't Stop Me style sounding album, then Become the Hunter is your jam. It is a great album, very much worth listening to, and I did listen to it when it came out in 2020, and I was very excited about it. Moving on, so number 4 spot. Might get some heat for this, but I've made up my mind. It's their sophomore album, No Time to Bleed. Their second album with Mitch. Now, this album has 3 of my top 10 tracks on it, but the album as a whole does suffer from a couple of little dips. Nothing weak here. There are no bad Suicide Silence songs. There's a few that dip below an 8 on the self-titled. But No Time to Bleed, all great tracks, couple of excellent tracks. But just the little dips in there. And to me, the only real weak point of this album is the production. I think Mitch's high vocals sound oversaturated. They sound really scratchy and really like echoey. If that's what they were going for, fine. But to me, it just was a little hard on the ear. The lows sound fucking incredible, though. But I did listen to this album when it came out. I bought it at Best Buy when it came out in 2009. In fact, when I saw them play live in 2009, of course, they were predominantly playing cleansing songs. But if I remember correctly, I think they teased. They said, "Who wants to hear a song off our upcoming album?" And I believe it was the self-titled track, No Time to Bleed, which is my favorite Suicide Silence song. No Time to Bleed. I fucking love that song. I love that outro. Just the difference between the "No Time to Bleed" with just the chugs behind it. Sometimes the production does work to the advantage of this album, but there's just a couple of parts that take away some of the flow, some of the volume, kind of makes the album sound a little fillerish at times with songs like Suffer. As catchy as Wasted is, it's a little repetitive to me. And then Genocide, while it's a decent enough single, it's one of the weaker singles they've ever put out. They definitely went for more of a doom metal element in some areas of like songs like Disengage or maybe Smoke. I do love the loud, scary horror movie sounds that they used in songs like the intro to Smoke or the bridge to Wasted. And how can I go this far into this album without talking about the fucking fact that it opens up with one of their best singles, Wake Up? It's such a solid opening track. Great music video. One of my favorite music videos of all time. I still love the song Wake Up. Something Invisible. The outro to Your Creation is just that corn ass sounding dun 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 dun, dun, those nasty diminished chords that are just going up the chromatic scale, and then slaughter them. Ba-na-na. So No Time to Bleed definitely has its high moments, but as an album, it does have a couple dips, and that's why it sits in the number 4 spot. But I do got a lot of nostalgia value to this album. But now we're going to really get into the high quality stuff here in the top 3. All right, so now into the top 3. The number 3 spot, capping off this 3-way tie. But just based on where it's at in time, man. Number 3 album goes to You Can't Stop Me. The debut of Eddie Hermida, who is just... I haven't talked about it yet, but really, who's the better vocalist between Eddie Hermida and Mitch Lucker? What's my opinion? I think technically speaking, Eddie's better. I think live, it's hard to say because I've seen them both. Eddie is the absolute best person they could have brought in to fill the shoes of Mitch Lucker, who left behind some massive shoes, not just because he had to stomp in them. Legend also has it, by the way, if you hear thunder, that's Mitch Lucker stomping in heaven. Or if you're a real metalhead, he's fucking banging on the earth's crust from hell. Sorry. Anyway, You Can't Stop Me was such a fucking statement of an album. I was so excited to hear it because I was a huge fan of All Shall Perish. Hearing Eddie, he's got more versatility in his vocals. He kind of shrieks on his highs more than Mitch where he screams, but you cannot deny the mids and the lows, the growling, the gutturals that Eddie does. He just sounds so much nastier. I can't tell with Mitch, with his lows, if he's just doing like an inhale vocal, like, sorry, I can't do it right now. And it just sounds like overly processed. I would say with raw talent, Eddie's probably better. I don't know how much Mitch had assistance in the booth, but live, Mitch sounds incredible. So no diss there. The reason I bring all that up, though, is because it really shines on You Can't Stop Me. To me, You Can't Stop Me is the cleansing of the Eddie Hermida era, because it's the best sounding album. The brutality's there. It's very rhythm heavy, and just the pure brutality of the low end, the polished production, it's just there. The only reason why this album is not like the best is just because there's not enough excellent tracks on here. But goddamn, if it's not a steady, solid, consistent album. Like I said, this is the best sounding album since The Cleansing. Brutal debut from Eddie. It is reminiscent of that older era. It's got some of that sludge sound that you would hear. But there's some hooks too, like, Inherit the Crown, like that's a statement song. Sacred Words is a very popular song. It's got a lot of great rhythm and some hooks and some great guitar work with some heavy ass chugs in between. Control is another brutal ass song. The album kind of dips a little bit with Warrior, You Can't Stop Me, and Monster Within. It gets a little boring there, but they're all still great songs. And it starts to pick up towards the end with my second favorite track from them, which is Ending Is the Beginning. Just the last... They're two best songs. No Time to Bleed and Ending Is the Beginning. I think they're both like under 2.5 minutes, and they just have disgusting outros and disgusting lows. The lows that he achieves in Ending Is the Beginning with just the gutturals, untouchable. Eddie really fucking flexes on this album and shows that he's here. He's not here to replace Mitch. He's here to honor and keep Suicide Silence alive, because guess what? If Mitch were still around, things might have turned out a lot differently. Who knows if they would have kept going on with the Black Crown sound, but apparently You Can't Stop Me wasn't just a revival or another chance for Eddie to front an incredible band, but it also brought Suicide Silence from the brink of destruction, because this was the part of their career where they were all deep into drugs and alcohol, and around this time they really started to get their shit back together and start putting out quality music again. So as tragic as it is, there can be a silver lining in certain stories, and I think You Can't Stop Me really embodies just the insane comeback. It's not a comeback from a week prior album. It's a comeback from a band that's probably about to fall apart for various reasons. And it's just titled perfectly. You Can't Stop Me. You Can't Stop Suicide Silence. Number 3 spot goes to their debut album with Eddie. Aged really well. Was very excited about it and still love it to this day. But on to the top 2. My second favorite album from Suicide Silence is 2011's The Black Crown. Now, I thought this was going to be their top album, but at this point, you already know what it's going to be. Black Crown is when they kind of started to introduce some nu metal elements. Not just because, Jonathan Davis of Korn is featured on Witness the Addiction. Solid, awesome song with a groovy drop F-sharp groove to it. I fucking love that song. But just like the intro to OCD, man, that just it sounds like some hard ass nu metal, man. I love it. This album's got more peaks. It's got more highs. It's like You Can't Stop Me, but with just a little bit more sex appeal to it. With singles like Slaves to Substance, which is just such a fuck you opening track. So step back, bitch. What the fuck's it gonna be? With the freaking harmonic, like, ugh. The only thing that could have made The Black Crown their best album is if it had cleansing style production, because it's got a lot of great leads and solos and melodies that you would start to hear more on No Time to Bleed. Forgot to mention that No Time to Bleed was when they really started debuting more lead guitar work. Well, that was refined further on The Black Crown. But beyond that, man, like Human Violence, aside from the fact that they started introducing tunings like drop G in Human Violence or F sharp like in Witness the Addiction, the hooks got solid too. The dynamics between the vocals and the breakdowns and the heaviness. There's just so many original sounding breakdowns and heavy ass rhythms going on with just drums, like the drumming. I think his name's Alex Garza, or is he the guitar player? Mark H is a guitarist. Forgetting names here. Suicide Silence's drummer is just disgusting. He's so fucking good. Really complements what's at times simplistic yet machine gun style riffing. When I heard that Mark Hylam, however you say his name, was inspired by Dimebag Darrell, that made a lot of sense to me, because Suicide Silence doesn't sound a lot like Pantera by any means, but I can hear the Dimebag influence in the rhythm and of course in the solos too, and you hear that in like Human Violence. You have the catchiness of fucking You Only Live Once with that great guitar intro. That's the thing that Mitch Lucker always had over Eddie, unfortunately, was just the ability to write more meaningful one-liners, more meaningful hooky style lyrics that still hit hard. That's where Mitch had the advantage. Suicide Silence during the Mitch years had a little bit more hunger and originality and personality in that sense. Doesn't mean that it's completely devoid of it now, but that's where the first three Suicide Silence albums have the advantage. March to the Black Crown is an epic transition track. I usually don't rate transition tracks, but to me this does help complete the album because it leads beautifully into Witness the Addiction. Last four tracks, Cross-Eyed Catastrophe used to be one of my favorites, not so much anymore, but it's still solid. Smashed is, in my opinion, a better version of Wasted. The only thing that sets us apart, really start to introduce some of the more melodic death metal elements there with some great guitar chords in the chorus, and some great grooves, especially on the outro. Go, 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 the only thing. Then Cancerous Skies is kind of just a okay outro song. But yeah, Black Crown, it's got a little bit more peaks than You Can't Stop Me. More memorable. I listened to it. I owned it back in 2011. Even though 2011 was a little bit of a roller coaster of a year, there were a lot of great memories to this album, and that's why it sits comfortably at the number 2 spot. Definitely the best album from Mitch, except for the number 1 spot, which is their first album, The Cleansing. Now, why am I surprised that the album that most people put at the top is at the top of my list? Well, my name is Jay Dennis. I'm a vocalist. I'm a guitar player, but I'm also a lead guitar player. Anytime I'm in a band, or I was in a band, I was the lead guitar player. People wanted me to play lead. Not because I'm an amazing shred soloist or anything like that, but it's because I write really good melodies, I write really good leads, I write really good harmonies, really good shit that goes over strong rhythms. And I'm a decent rhythm player too. I mean, I'm a rhythm player at my heart, but I fucking love leads. So why the fuck would I put The Cleansing, which is a rhythm-heavy album, devoid of lead guitar work, except for the octave chords in the Fallen or the solo in the outro to No Pity for a Coward? It's because The Cleansing is a fucking genre-defining album that is just such a powerful statement of an album for a band to start their career. And it's the best sounding album. It was recorded live. I never knew that. It was recorded live. Even if at times it sounds like they're just playing the same low-end riffs, they're not. It's actually really impressive how diverse they are with their deathcore style playing, where their death metal elements with tremolo picking, low-end chugging on the 7th string, and just the dynamics between how all of that works, that sludgy guitar tone, that sustain that you hear on the low end with the guitars and the bass, with perfect dynamic adrenaline-inducing drumming in between everything. It's just the snare, the fucking cymbal work, the toms, the way the bass drum echoes. It's just such a sexual album to listen to if you just want something raw and heavy. And then, of course, it's the album that Mitch Lucker sounds the best in. It's the album he sounds the best in. Yes, he maybe gets a little bit more diverse in his different types of vocals. He does a little bit more like talking nu metal vocals in like The Black Crown. Maybe he does a little bit more in No Time to Bleed, but The Cleansing, just the contrast between that extreme high he does and that extreme low he does. Really no mids, but the highs and the lows, that's all you need with Mitch, man. The hooks, the iconic nature of it, the fact that I saw them perform a lot of this album perfectly live back in 2009. And this was the album that got me into them. This was the album that basically got me into the genre. It was this and Whitechapel's fucking This Is Exile album. A lot of solid memories to this album from my senior year of high school. If you're featured in a senior year of high school album list for me, there's a chance you're going to rank a little bit higher up on the album, on my rankings. Sans a few exceptions, but few of my favorite tracks are off this album. Of course, there's Unanswered. For all the prayers that go unanswered. The two snare hits, come on. It just, the first 5 tracks, I'm not talking about Revelations, but like, Unanswered, fucking Hands of a Killer, which just has that disgusting low-end riff that leads perfectly into that old school Korn sounding, that drop. Go, it's disgusting. Hands of a Killer, awesome song. Price of Beauty, another iconic song. The Fallen with those leads, and of course, No Pity for a Coward. Just sit back and relax. Put your fucking shades on, man. And of course, pull the trigger, bitch. This is the album that started it all for a lot of us, man. It keeps the quality going with Bludgeoned to Death, Eyes Sewn Shut, Green Monster, and then of course the closing track, which is technically a hidden track, Destruction of a Statue. Always one of my favorite songs with that insanely good breakdown. While it's musically, technically, probably their simplest album, it's just recorded so well, it's executed so well, and even if it's devoid of melody or solos or anything like that, it doesn't matter, because this album and its identity is just solid, it's unapologetic, and it's fucking perfect for the era that it came out in. So, it is an excellent album, and it is their best album. I thought it would be like their third or fourth, and I would put something like Black Crown or No Time to Bleed at the top, but it's The Cleansing, man. It was always The Cleansing. So let's review real quick and go over my top 10. From least favorite to most favorite, we got Suicide Silence, Become the Hunter, No Time to Bleed, You Can't Stop Me, Black Crown, and The Cleansing. Congratulations, Eddie. One of your albums made it in the top 3. Top 10 tracks. Something Invisible, Destruction of a Statue, Death's Anxiety from Become the Hunter. Wake Up, Slave to Substance, No Pity for a Coward, Unanswered, Human Violence, Ending is the Beginning, and No Time to Bleed. So 2 of my favorite tracks are from Eddie. So congratulations. Be sure to comment below what you agree with or disagree with. Do you prefer Mitch or Eddie? I'm purely talking about vocals in the context of Suicide Silence. I'm not talking about personalities or anything like that. Maybe live performances too. I think they're both awesome. Of course, Mitch had a certain magic to him, and of course that legendary stomp. Mitch was always somebody that I looked up to in that regard. But I lean a little bit more towards Eddie, even though Suicide Silence did technically put out their best material with Mitch. But keep chugging ahead, boys. You guys are putting out insanely good music. Whatever direction you guys go in, I'm likely going to support it. Comment below what you agree or disagree with. How would you rank them differently? What are your favorite tracks? Do you have any good stories? And am I talking too fast? Be sure to check out the rest of the Ranked and Review playlist. The next video that's coming out will be video number 50. What am I going to do special for video number 50? Let's find out. I'm going to go address these barking dogs. Peace.